Hey, I didn't see you there. Hello and welcome back to the workshop and welcome back to the Great Guitar Build-Off 2021. Now, as you saw in the last video, we have got the basic body shape down. Now we need to work on the top and the back in order to close up this body. And as you can see, I got a new piece of swag. I love the fact that they have made shirts for this competition this year, and of course I couldn't help myself but get one. But anyway, what are we working on today? I'm going to start with the top on this one. One, so that it'll hold this shape in place. I have left the post in just to hold the shape and to help finish off this radius profile, as you can see. So that way I can glue that in place, and then we can radius the back of it and get that straightened out and sorted out. So, don't need this for the time being. So I've gone ahead and I've made this jig which has the radius on it. I did put a piece of sheet steel on the inner part of it so that it can help transfer the heat, because these boards are still a little thick. Basically the concept is that I'm going to take and wet it down just like you would when you bend sides, but I'm going to take these silicone heating pads and lay them across on the length of the body to help transfer heat so that this mold can then help make it into a complete radius. I'm still debating what the best approach is going to be for that. Part of me thinks that maybe I should hog out some of the excess of the material so that there's less to try and bend. I already went ahead and glued it together. See, I've got a slight angle here. Now that I'm looking at the seam though, there's a little bit of gapping here that I don't care for too much. So I think I'm going to have to address that. But I'm also concerned that once I bend this into the shape, that glue is going to let go anyway, just being that it reacts to heat. So I figured at this point, just so I don't have to transfer too much heat, I may just trim these edges down. I'm going to go far outside my line so that I can then trim afterwards. But I've roughly drawn in pencil about where I need to cut those off. So I think if I just zip it on the bandsaw, we'll be off to the races. So to start it off, I'm just going to dampen the inside. Now the man that I spoke to about doing this said to avoid wetting down the top part that's going to show on the outside, and just to wet the inside. He said because once you heat it up, it'll discolor the wood, is what he had found when he was doing stuff like this. So I'm going to take that similar approach, and I'm just going to wet it down with a spray bottle here. And with my straps, I'm going to avoid the glue seam so that I can avoid heating that up too much, because I don't want it to separate. Alright, so I left the heat on for a little bit, gone ahead and turned it off. Now I'm just going to leave it in this mold for about a day or two, just to help it set better in the mold. You see I've added a couple clamps just to hold it in place on the edges here. The weights weren't quite getting to the outer part of it. So now we just wait. Alright, so it's been a couple days now. I think that I can pop this out of the mold, and we'll see where we're at All right, I was expecting quite a bit more spring back than that, but so far nothing has bounced back. I do see that the moisture caused it to crack a little bit, but it looks like it's on the outside of my line, which must have been the cracking that I was hearing when I was getting it in the mold. It's good that we have now done some bending and we didn't have any complications like we did with the sides of it. Looks like some of the glue released, which is okay. We can get that popped back into place. But we have a radiused top. Got a nice curve to that. That's exactly what I was looking for. Just gonna take a minute here and kind of size it up with the body. And it fits like a glove. I am very happy with that. And I'm very happy that there wasn't any more complications, because I was a little disheartened when I was working on it the last time and the sides started cracking. But like I said, we do have a hairline crack here, but it's right outside of the body. So I think we can cut away that waste and we'll be golden. So now what I gotta do is I gotta figure out where my bridge is going to sit so that I can get a block on there for where that bridge is going to be. And then we need to figure out bracing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the center line and I'm going to get it traced on there on the inside and outside perimeter. And then I'm going to try and carefully flip this so that I can then mark out about where my bridge is going to go. So that way I can use, I think I'm just going to use some of this scrap red heart here to help with that, because I had some cutoffs from the body that is just about the right radius already. So another good reason why it's not a bad idea to keep your scraps around. Looks pretty good. It's oversized, so it gives me plenty of room to play. It'll help stabilize that section of it, and it's thin enough to fit behind the block. And all of those make me very happy. So I think all that's left is to glue it on. I glued the plate in for the bridge here, and I also roughly cut it down to shape. So as you can see, we've got a guitar top. Looks real nice. It's just a little bit oversized, so that way I can trim it off as needed when I get it all glued together. But now I need to focus on doing some braces. Now I've roughly cut these two pieces of scrap maple. One is going to go here, and then I'm going to cross them over on each other here. But before I can do that, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to get the actual radius onto these before I can glue them onto it. Now, this curve is a little more than what I needed to. As you can see, I've got quite the radius going on this top here. So what I think I'm going to do in order to get the final radius of this is I think I'm actually going to clamp it down to the body first, then place these in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a washer to get the actual curve for each of these pieces. Then I'm going to cut the cross sections for them to join together, and then we'll glue them in place. That way, these braces will also help pull it into the final radius, because after I was done bending these, there wasn't as much spring back as I thought there was going to be. So these actually have quite a curve to them, almost more so than what this actual template is. But that's fine. It'll all sort itself out once I glue it together. And realistically, the more I'm looking at it, because I'm going to have to clamp this with the post in here to make sure that these sit square, I might actually end up gluing it first before I put the braces in. Which isn't ideally how I wanted to do it, but it'll work the same in the end. Yeah, because ultimately, I'm going to need to cut these down to their appropriate heights anyway to fit around this post. So it looks like I'm going to go to my other option, and I'm just going to glue this top on, and then we'll do the braces on the inside once everything has dried and set and is good to go. All right, well, no time like the present, so all right, well, it looks pretty good, so I'm going to let this dry now. It seems that there are certain compression points that are actually clamping down the rest of it. It's unfortunate my spool clamps only will hook onto certain spots, so I wasn't able to go the full perimeter around like I would have liked to do. But it looks like I've got plenty of squeeze out all the way around, so I think we'll be all right with this glue up here, and maybe I'll have to find some other way to extend my clamping range with these things. Maybe I can get another set of threaded inserts to make these longer. Anyway, we'll see. Alright, so as you see, we're doing some general laying out. I was going to make my own bridge and knobs at this point, but I have these really nice gold ones. So I think that because this one is a low pro, and if I were to make one it would stand taller, I think we're just going to go with a regular Les Paul style bridge. So I've got the placement for that. I think the P90 is going to go in the bridge position, so just above where that is going to go. But because I went with this specific type of P90, I'm actually going to have to recess a hole in it. I think there's plenty of room behind that post for this to sit. I'm just going to need to fashion something on the inside to have the set screws for the height adjustment for this pickup. So I'm happy with all this placement. The knobs aren't going to be exactly in this spot. It's going to be dependent on the bracing and where those fall. So I'm going to drill a hole for the bridge, mark out where this pickup is going to go, and then we're going to cut and install bracing. So as you can see, we got a nice mark on there for where that is going to be cut into the proper radius. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this off in the bandsaw, and then all I have to do is tweak with some files to make it a nice flush fit. All I did was I took this washer here and rode along the side with the pencil and the washer, and that rode across the top, giving me the specific arc that that top is bent to. So I'm going to go zip this on the bandsaw. We'll get them fitted and prepared for gluing, and then I'm going to drill the holes for the bridge posts. Alright, you can see with just cutting right outside the lines and with a little bit of shaving, we got a nice snug fit for both of these. So I'm going to have to cut the notch for them to intersect each other. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and drill for where my posts are going to go. It's on there is really nice and centered. So normally the bracing would be glued in before I put any sides on or glue the top to it, but because of the radius being a little over what it needed to be beforehand, I have to do this on the inside with it glued to the sides. So I think what I'm going to do, now that I've got it a height that the post sits over top of, we're just going to mark out where the post is, and then I'm going to rough shape these to their final shape, because it's going to be hard for me to get a chisel or my thumb planes in here to do any of the shaping. So that way, once it's in the rough shape, all I have to do is do some final shaping and final sanding. I'm not going to do any of the arcs, because that's going to be a lot harder to glue down this way. So I'm going to leave them flat on the top, but I'm going to profile them to the curves that I want them at. All right, we got some nice subtle curves in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue these in place. We'll let them dry and then I'll shape them up. For the sake of this build, it's not ideally how I would like to clamp it. I should make one of those contraptions where it has the wood pieces that hold this down in place. That wouldn't have worked great with the sides here anyway, not to mention the radius on the top. So this will do for now. So I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to finish shaping these up, and then we'll see how well the fit is with the neck as well. I think I've cut enough away where it should just float right over top of those. Anyway, we'll let it dry and we'll come back. Alright, so those braces are glued in. They look great. I'm going to need to do some cleanup here and shape them down because they're a little more bulky than I'd like them to be. But before I do that, I think I'm going to drill some holes for this pickup mount. I've got it roughly marked out here where it's going to go. What I think I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to cut this hole out, and then I'm going to have to add some meat on both sides in order to use these screw mount holes. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then that way I can find out exactly where I need to cut those posts in order to put those screw mounts. Alright, that worked pretty good. We got a little of the bulk off of there. Still not big enough for the pickup, which is perfect, so that way I can clean up these edges. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to start taking some files to it, and I'm going to shape it down real nice and slow. And then from there I can determine where the blocks are going to go for the mounting here. P90s generally have a straight mount. I think I may switch these for a spring mount just to help it sink a little bit more into the body. I know that I'm also held up by the depth of where my post is going, which is going to play into how I do this. So I've got some thinking to do of how I want to approach that. But I'm very happy with the result for it. I'm going to clean up this hole, and then we'll start shaping the braces. Just wanted to show you real quick. We got a nice snug fit, and with the post in, I have plenty of room to move it down. So I'm going to have two segmented pieces that are going to sit underneath the pickup that are going to give me the added meat that I need to add the springs and screws into it. But so far, it looks like a guitar. And I couldn't be happier. Alright, so proof of concept. It works. It is low enough to clear the bridge and high enough to clear the post. Now, it ain't the prettiest yet, the way it is now on the inside, but we'll clean that up. We need to shave down these braces anyway, and then we can clean up this back side of it, radius it, and we can get the back on it. So far, I am loving the look of that. Excuse the mess on my bench. Well, I gotta say, we made a lot of progress. This looks like a guitar now. I'm very happy with it. Obviously, I've got some sanding to do on the sides here, clean all this up, and I've got to finish sanding down the inside. I've rough shaped these to where just about where I want them to be. The top is nice and sturdy, and the neck fits like a glove. Nothing is making contact. You can see there's some clearance underneath those braces. So what's next? I've got all of my mounting in place, so I need to crop off the excess of this tail block so that I can then cut and form a tail piece. And I want to make sure that I get everything lined up and in place before I get the back on, so that I can clean out all the rest of this and carve down this part of it. But we need to radius the back first before we can put this on here, because I'm going to do the same type of radius that I've got on this top here. So what does this mean? I think we're going to end this video here. I'm satisfied with where we're at, and I don't want to rush a good thing. So in the next video, we're going to work on the placement of the rest of the hardware. We're going to cut off this tail block to make a tail piece. And maybe we'll get to doing some of the frets. And then to tie off this whole piece, we're going to start working off on the back. So there's going to be a couple more videos here before I get this thing all wrapped up. But we are getting real close, and I'm real happy with where we're at. And don't forget, if you like what we're doing here, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. And we'll see you in the next one. Until next time.